So the intro should be playing. I should know how long. I think it's like 15 seconds. So I don't know if it stopped. We'll go to main. Go to main camera. And we should be good. Hello and welcome to the Cultivated channel. Today we are going to talk about time and all the lovely things that go along with time, which is super complex and super difficult. And it's just going to be how we're, I guess, what's going on in our lives in reference to time right now, because we can probably talk about time for all of time. So with that being said, please welcome Juliet Braslow, and I'm Carlos Villafuerte, your host. And I'll start off with time. Time, I've done many reflections on time, and I will say that it is one of those things where it is a construct, it is a tool, it's meant for us to be used for our convenience, for what we want. But that being said, in my reflections, you always come to the reality that our time is limited. So even if we don't want to use a measuring, time when we use it to measure ourselves is finite. And I think a lot of times for me, I've reflected and thought, considering that, what do I want out of time? And I think, considering it's limited, I want to get the most out of it, right? And I think when we suffer and we're in pain, time goes the slowest, so we get the most out of our time. But I don't think most people want to suffer. And then when we're having fun and really enjoying ourselves, it goes really fast, which I also don't think we want. And what I've come to the conclusion is that when we try something new, something different for that individual, not different for everybody, but different for that individual, that it goes slower and it's a little exciting. So with me, with time, considering all its complexities from a very macro standpoint, it is about the direction, the north is about trying something different. And that's how I feel about time right now. We'll see where I am in the future. What are your thoughts?
I think that I find, especially as we get older, the conversations, oh, I can't believe it's Wednesday, I can't believe it's October, so there's this sense that time is going by so quickly. But if you talk to a child, you don't get that. Like, at least I haven't. Talking to children, it's not, I can't believe it's already October. That's not anything a young child say. And I think there's a lot we can learn from children about it, because a lot in your idea of what's new, and it helping to slow time down, a lot for kids ends up being new. Regularly there's new learning, there's new things that they explore or are exposed to, and being able to, in many ways, not be pushed around by time, because I think for me that's what some of the struggle is, that it kind of becomes a rush, right? Time, the sort of boundaries, or getting somewhere on time, for example, trying to get out the door on my own, and I'm ever the optimist of how long things will take me. And so then the rush sets in. And, in addition to what time can offer us is, being able to meet someone at the same place, it also offers on the other side needing to get there at that time to respect other people's time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're great. You bring up two really good things in reference to one, children. I think so many times when I find myself at odds with a problem or with something, I think back and I think, if I told my problem to a toddler, what would they say? And so many times, I mean, you can't do sometimes what they think say, but I think ultimately the foundation of your answer is based on what they would say. If you're always complaining, always miserable at work, they'll be like, quit. And you'll be like, well, I can't quit. I need to. But it usually means you got to start looking for a job. You got to start changing yourself to maybe change your environment and that type of thing. And the second part is in reference to time is great in reference to as a tool. But if you over focus on anything, I mean, too much of anything is bad, as they say. And I think that goes along the lines where time is good to make sure you get there on time, but if you're hyper focused, everyone's stressed, everyone's trying to get the door, and then you don't enjoy that moment. Like getting ready should be something that we want to enjoy. Sometimes, especially in cities, it takes you an hour to get there and you have a half an hour meeting. You know what I mean? Like you should enjoy it because it's a lot more time, double the time to go and come back to your meet with somebody than the time you're going to spend with them. So you should enjoy that. But it's really, really hard in the moment. And I think that this is where it's important to reflect in the morning. I know it sounds cheesy, but just 5 minutes to go through your day. And just for me, when I used to work corporate, I used to get in a half an hour before everybody, and we used to start early, so early. But I would do it just to be able to take a deep breath and kind of situate myself and be like, okay, get this stuff ready, get this other stuff. And that made a huge difference. I got more logistical stuff done in a half an hour than I would get done in, maybe 10 hours throughout the day. Because it's just me and my thoughts, and I can formulate and I can plan and I can organize and I can send out the emails. I can do all those type of things. So I think that, ultimately, I think it comes down to you and you as an individual. Sometimes people, like you said, overly optimistic people are very late all the time. And so trying to adapt and use time to make the most of time for you, if that makes any sense.
Yes, definitely. And it makes me think of a moment that forced me to look at things a little differently around time. So rushing out of the door in the morning, and having a very sort of painful goodbye with my toddler, and it was just bad for everybody. And then I just had this must get out, don't want to be late, I have to go. And it was just crying, and of course leaving my toddler stressed, I'm stressed, and realizing when I came home that day, this doesn't make sense. Like two different aspects of time. One, for me, it's more important to spend my time with my child to make sure we can find a way to have an okay goodbye, to set the day in a good way for both of us. And what's more important, me getting to my desk on time or me being able to have this? It doesn't have to be easy. It's not going to be beautiful necessarily. It could be a hard moment, but to make sure that it's not, okay, bye, I have to leave, but making sure that we're both okay. And then realizing also that being able to prepare so I'm not rushing, like you were saying, it doesn't have to be a rush. So what can I do to make this time more enjoyable beforehand? So that comes to planning, which is a whole other element too.
No, I think that the time is one of those things, and I think it's a perfect example where it's different. I guess the big thing for me, and I'll go a little off tangent, I guess, but talking about time is one of those things, like most things, that the short term versus long term. And I think your example is a perfect thing like that. There's so many things that if we just got done right now, we wouldn't carry, so we wouldn't be stressed and have anxiety. But more importantly, it's done, and instead of just doing a little at a time, and I'm a big proponent of consistency over time, especially with big things. But I think, like, especially with medium-sized things, like this, a toddler having a breakdown, you can just be like, I don't have time for this, and then leave. But I'm telling you, that's gonna come back, and it's going to get
Yes.
worse, and it's gonna get worse, and eventually you're gonna have to deal with it, and it's gonna cost you so much more time overall than if you just say, hey boss, I'm gonna be late to work, and then deal with that problem right there and then, and nip it in the butt. Find, do have difficult conversation with yourself sometimes, like, hey, what are they going through? How can I help? Where do I want to be? And looking at it from the medium term perspective. And then, of course, I don't want to speak in reference to, I know some people just can't do that, but assuming you can have the
Right.
luxury to be able to have some flexibility. I'm not saying do it all the time, but just say, I have a bit of an emergency, I'm going to be 30 minutes late. Assuming you're not a doctor going to surgery or something of the sort, where life and death situation, or sometimes jobs aren't flexible like that.
Right.
But that being aside, so many times we just want to be on time to be on time. We want to be good little boys and girls, and we have to remember: do we also want to be a good parent? Do we want a good daughter, a good son, a good all these other roles that we have, that we don't just have for the certain amount of years at a company or at an organization. We have it for the rest of our lives. And I think for me, when you were talking, it brings up my dad. And for me, talking with my dad was very, very difficult. My dad, just to sum up, was drunk and abusive, and lots of trauma in my childhood. But that being said, I got to a place as an adult where I could sit and I could talk to him for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'd be like, hey, gotta go, because just thinking about it, like, kind of stresses me out because it was just tiring. And it doesn't mean I don't agree with what he said and everything, but that was the time I wanted to give him. And I think there's that idea of, like, time for ourselves, time for others, because we are social beings, but only time that we can afford. And sometimes we think we can't afford any, but we have to switch the picture, because when my dad died, if you're always about later, then
Yes.
they're dead. And then you never get later. And I know a lot of people, especially during COVID, had a lot of people pass away like that. It's something with my grandfather. My grandpa passed away, and it wasn't this thing about, like, oh, what did I say? How did I end it? Blah, blah. There wasn't that. It was sad, but it was more about, like, considering the circumstances, it's okay. And I think that making sure that we are, again, it's a tool. We're using time the way we think is good. And that means taking a step back and looking at our lives and asking ourselves what is important. And I think one of the things we should always do, and this is very morbid in reference to, like, death, but just think about, death is such a great catalyst and gets us motivated and thinking, when I die, what are people going to say about me? And, I'm not saying you need a legacy or anything, but I'm saying that how do we want to be remembered, and how do we want others to think of us is important. I don't think what other people think of us is important, but I think that what we want other people to think of us is important, because we're social beings. And I'm not saying that should be your end all be all. I think what you think of yourself is most important. But that being said, it is critical and important, and we need to allocate time, and how we spend that time is extremely important.
I think that you really, sharing how you choose to spend your time and being intentional about it, I think helps lead to having fewer regrets, right?
Yeah.
If you're thinking sort of towards the future. So for me, it's been a struggle of many years to be willing to plan and schedule things that I used to think should be spontaneous, like having fun with friends, and these kinds of things are, oh yes, I'll see my parents at some point, and then we'll be spending time together. But realizing that it has to be, for me at least, more intentional if I want to make sure that it happens, and then I don't end up feeling, but this weekend I thought I was gonna do all these fun things. Well, I didn't plan them. I just had an idea. I didn't communicate it with, my partner. So how is it just going to magically happen? And realizing that it's okay to plan fun. It's okay to plan social engagements and interactions. And now, with this kind of positive feedback loop of, oh, now I'm spending a lot of time doing these things that I want to do, time with family, time with friends, time for myself.
Yeah.
And that's because I've become better at being intentional, and whatever that looks like for you. For me, it's like making sure it's in the calendar, and then communicating it with the people, my family, so that it can happen. It's not always perfect, but that is something that is important to me now. And I would say 5-10 years ago, I would have said, oh, no, I don't need to do that.
No, I think it's also a great. There's so many good points about time in reference to not only scheduling things we have to do, but scheduling things we want to do.
Yes.
Right, or that are good for us, or we need potentially. I think that's extremely important, and we need to. And I know everyone's gonna be like, I don't have time. How am I gonna do it? But you gotta figure out. I'm not saying fix it now, but take baby steps to get to a point where you do have control to be able to do those things while balancing time and whatever other things that are important to you. And time can be really, really amazing in reference to you allocating time where you find appropriate. And it's like, you can still make mistakes. You're going to spend time and be like, well, that was a waste, but you chose it. It's I know there's a lot of things in life we don't get to choose, but I think that we do get to choose what we focus on, and that means we get to we get to choose our time. And that being said, it makes a huge difference in reference to how you see it, because when you're more conscious about it, you grow, and that's really important. That being said, I think that one thing that's really counterintuitive with time is scheduling blank time. When we talked about this,
yes.
And I think that it's one of those things that's very counterintuitive, because you want to get the most out of your time, but if you don't plan, if you don't allocate, if you don't have, and sometimes that's just blank space, because there's just so much coming at us from like the world and outside and people and jobs and yeah, and just all this stuff. It's just blank space, and what I'm talking about is where it's not a reflection or reference to a specific thing or anything about yourself. It's that you sit there and you try to not think about anything, a blank space almost, and you get a piece of paper or something that works for you, and whatever comes in you kind of write down. And what ends up happening is it's like this weird thing where you have all this stuff going through, and then it starts to kind of organize itself. And then you're like, hey, maybe you like, oh shit, I was supposed to do this one thing. And then you like write it down. And then, or you think, hey, that other person would be great to do this thing with this other thing. And so it's one of those things where that it can make a really cool, amazing thing be even better, and you get more out of your time. You also everyone thinks, wow, you're just you think of such creative things outside the box, and you're able to piece together so well. You're so strategic and all that kind of stuff. And we've talked about this like shower time.
Yes, I have great ideas that come in the shower because you're not doing anything else. Your brain can kind of take over and make links, and things come to you that wouldn't otherwise. And I think it also, maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's doing something else that allows you to, I guess, be free from distractions or other things that take your attention. And I think also there's this tension with time where sometimes the rush pushes things that aren't necessarily going to have the best outcomes, right? Rushing out the door, rushing a conversation with someone, because giving our time, that's a very precious resource. So giving your time to be spending with someone, but then feeling, oh, it has to be rushed, I only have 5 minutes. But then on the other side, also the knowing that the time is finite, whether it's big picture life as a whole, or, the day that you have to get X number of things done. It can also push to clarity, right? What's important? What's the priority? Okay, not all 10 of these are going to happen, maybe only 3, and then I have to be very efficient with them. So there's this tension. Both things can be true. The time that makes you rush can help you focus and prioritize, but then it can also lead to rushed outcomes that maybe aren't the best. So finding the way to balance that works best for me in each scenario is kind of a trial and error situation.
Yeah, it's really just really twisted too, because you're like, I don't have enough time for all this stuff, and then you got to take time to burn stuff, right? And ideally, you burn, 10 hours worth of stuff and it takes you an hour, so you gain more time. But it's not always clear, especially when you start in the beginning, because you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to do it, and so on and so forth. So it can be really difficult overall to do that. But I think it is really important to, and sometimes nothing changes, but you're still happier. I truly believe that you're happier because you go into it and you're like, that's not going to get done. It's going to burn, and it hurts, maybe.
Yes, it's so hard.
And you're like, I really wanted to do it. It's really important, but there's just no way you can do it. And that's better than just believing you can do it and somehow rushing and not even enjoying those things that you're rushing through potentially, so that you can get to the thing that you will never get to. And so I think for me, it's being conscious of your time. That's it. It's just being conscious of your time. There's lots of great things. There's lots of habits. There's all these amazing things you can do about your time, so you don't have regrets, so you get the most out of your time, so you're happier, so you're better, so you're more productive. But just focus on one little thing, slow and steady growth in reference to it. But that means being conscious of what you're doing and doing what's right for you. If something we're talking about resonates for you, try it, and then try something different. And like I said, it goes back to this idea, doing something different for you. And if it works, keep doing that, and then keep doing something different. And it doesn't have to be mind-blowing or earth-shattering, just slow and steady little things. And if you can't come up with ideas, go onto one of the ChatGPT type things and start coming up with ideas and try something there. Now we have no excuse to be like, can't think of anything. You have an assistant or a person there to bounce idea, to brainstorm. Exactly, to brainstorm as much as you want. So I think that's a good place to end it. What any last thoughts or things you want to recap on?
Yeah, I think for me, one thing you mentioned is like leaving that space. So one thing I'm going to challenge myself to do is to plan in that space in between meetings, in between activities. I've just had a week where everything felt very back to back, and I didn't feel in control and intentional about all of my time. So something to consider, but something that I'm going to try to do as well.
And, if you are struggling when you get caught up with time, and you hyper focus and you struggle to let go of that stuff, my suggestion is take a minute, take a deep breath, and then think about, in a year from now, is this going to mean a lot? Is it going to be a big, if it is, then yes, focus that potential excitement, right, into planning or organizing or making sure that you have your shot at that thing. But if it's not, then, let it go. And sometimes that's really, really hard.
It's so hard.
So look back in the past and be like, when have I been able to let go of something really, really important or big to the world, but that wasn't to me, and I was actually okay. And then you're like, the eye of the storm where stuff's going crazy, but you're okay. And I think it's really about you, and goes back to the selfishness of it. When you are good, then other people can lean on you. You can help others. So there's a whole idea that having a purpose in life that helps others is kind of the meaning of life in some ways, but you can only do that when you take care of yourself. And that means taking time for yourself, taking time to see the bigger picture, and taking time to then try something different. All right, that's it for this podcast. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully it's live. This is our second, technically third. First one never even got recorded. So hopefully this will be recorded. And until next time, stay curious, stay open, and stay true to you. And if you want more information, please check out the book, The Selfish Guide. It's available on Amazon as well as the website, coltonvita.com. There's lots of really good stuff in there, or other videos. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And thanks for watching. If you have any ideas, please comment below. If anything you want us to talk about, we're happy to talk about different things considering our backgrounds and our perspective. And hopefully this was helpful for you. And if it was, please forward it to someone that it could help, or try something that we said. Thanks.